Too. What's going on, everybody? Brandon Scoopy Robinson, senior writer at Heavy.com, here for another edition of Heavy Live with Scoop B. It's Monday. We did it a little earlier this time. Wanted to, try some different things out, and we are live on Heavy on Celtics, Heavy on Lakers, and Heavy on Bulls Facebook pages, as well as live via my Twitter at Scoop B via Periscope, and we are live and direct and in effect with my main man, Harlem by way of Oklahoma City, mind you.
Tulsa. Harlem by way of Tulsa.
You know what? You're right. We're going to talk about it in a minute. I visited Tulsa and Oklahoma City last summer, but we are here with Etan Thomas, retired NBA vet, social activist, MSNBC commentator, and he's a writer at Basketball News. What's going on, Chief?
What's going on, sir? How you feeling?
Man, it's Monday. It's the day after game. What's that? Game 3, and we got a lot to talk about. It's been a minute.
It has been a minute, man. You was out at the what it was the event with their Emerald Garner with the Garner family in Harlem at Canaan Baptist Church. That's what we last talked, right? We talked about Carmelo. We talked about all that stuff with the Knicks and D'Antoni. Oh, don't get me started on D'Antoni. Well, we ain't gonna go down that road.
What's your issue?
My issue is since he quit on the Knicks, he keeps getting opportunity after opportunity, and people like Mark Jackson don't get another shot. That's my issue. You agree or do you disagree with what I said?
I agree, but I think that the Mark Jackson thing, there are some underlying themes that are going on deeper than basketball.
Oh, of course there are. But we're talking about purely from a basketball standpoint. I mean, it's not just Mark Jackson. I mean, I can go down a whole list of coaches who I think, but his name keeps getting recycled all the time. He informed the Rockets that he's no longer going to be the coach there, and immediately he interviews with Philly. He interviews. I'm like, what is that? I mean, from we talked before. I grew up a diehard Knicks fan, and I take Knicks issues personally. I'm an emotional New York Knicks fan, like most New Yorkers, right? So when I saw him quit on the Knicks and blame everything on Melo, I was like, the nerve of this dude. And so from that point, I was off him.
Yeah, and then he got a job with the Lakers afterwards.
Immediately. Then he went down. It's just like, I just don't see opportunities for us being like that. And we'll achieve greatness. We'll achieve different milestones. When I say us, I mean black coaches. Right now, we're at what? Five black coaches in a league, a progressive league of 30 teams. Come on, man.
I know that you look at the coaching search currently. I know that the Thunder, as well as the Rockets, are interviewing Ty Lue, Sell, and David Vanterpool, a name that is not discussed a ton.
Mm-hmm.
He went to Providence. I know you probably know David.
I know for the Wizards.
Wizards?
Yep. We crossed briefly.
Yeah. He played the Nets. He was Jason Kidd's backup briefly in the preseason.
Mm-hmm.
He's currently an assistant coach with the Timberwolves. What do you know about him?
I was younger. That was like when I first got here with the Wizards, and he was a vet, and I think he was on his way out. So we talked a little bit. So I don't know a whole lot about him. But hey, I'd be happy for him to get a chance. If D'Antoni gonna get chance after chance, he need to get a chance too. So that's what I think.
Dan Cassell, did you guys cross paths when he was an assistant with the Wizards, or more so when you guys were vets and played in the league?
We were vets. I mean, I remember when I was out there and working out in LA. Me, Jamal McGlure, the whole class, we was out there working out. And I remember we was out one night and Sam Cassell, came and just parted wisdom and knowledge to us. You know what I mean? He just started breaking stuff down for us. And that was really, I could tell then that he was going to be a coach. Or either a coach or a teacher or something. Because he didn't really even know us, but he just started rapping to us and just breaking stuff down, talking to us about stuff from the draft, what to expect when we go to these workouts, and this is we had a party, you know what I mean? Like, so we outside and everybody's chilling and stuff like that, and we breaking down different stuff about working out. So I got nothing respect for Sam Cassell. But yeah, he should have had a head coaching position too by now. He's been paying his dues all this time. damn Tony. Come on, man.
Dunbar High School legend in Baltimore, Sam Cassell. He
Yeah.
was assistant coach for about 11 years with the Wizards,
Yeah.
with Doc in Los Angeles with the Clippers.
Yep.
I remember spending time with him during my childhood when he was with the Nets under John Calipari, and even as a 12-year-old when I was doing with the Nets, he was different. Him and Calipari would clash, but have a love-hate relationship.
Yeah. Right.
Where do you think he's a fit?
I mean, I think he's a fit in a lot of different places, honestly. I mean, I think for one with the Clippers, I think it should be one or the other, either T. Lue or Sam Cassell. That's not even a question. If they go outside and bring somebody else in and skip over them, that's just disrespectful. That's what I think. I think so. First and foremost, one of them should have that job opportunity, and then kind of go from there.
When you look at the NBA Finals, did the Lakers wet the bed last night?
No, I don't think so. I mean, Anthony Davis didn't have one of his best games, but I think that, I'm watching it with my son. Actually, literally, I just sent a text to my son and, told I coach his AAU team. Got a shout out, FBCG Elite, Dynamic Disciples. So I coach his AAU team, and I sent a text to him showing him, how a man had 40 points and didn't take one three-pointer. Do you know what I mean? Complete mid-range game, complete, going to the basket, straight. And that's, there's a new basketball now, and everybody wants to shoot up threes. And that's not my thing. I know, you see it, and it really started with Golden State. Mm-hmm. That's really where that trend came. And it was interesting because, we talked about Mark Jackson earlier. He made a comment a while ago and said Steph Curry was ruining AAU basketball. Do you remember that? And everybody got mad at him, and it was like, you dissing Steph Curry? He was like, no, this ain't about Steph Curry. This is about all the young cats that think they're Steph Curry and now want to jack up three-pointers as soon as they step into the court. And I understood completely what he meant by that. And I interviewed him for my podcast, The Rematch, and I asked him about that. We just recently was talking about that. But no, I mean, I wanted to show my son, look at how he's playing. Look at his relentlessness. Look at how he's, putting the team on his back, how he's, going after every rebound, going after every, block. He's taking a hard assignment. He said, I'm going to guard LeBron. You know what I mean? And I'm going to, go on the offensive end and attack and be in attack mode. I mean, I nothing but respect for him. Jimmy Buckets, he had a phenomenal game yesterday.
He's an outlier. Let me start from the beginning. In a world full of three-point shooters,
yes,
Jimmy Butler is making Gladwell proud by being an outlier, by doing it to the hard way.
I agree 100%.
Who in your era? Who was your era's Jimmy Butler?
Well, Richard Hamilton was the mid-range king, in my area. He would move. He would be, he patterned his game after Reggie Miller. And he would just be in constant movement, going across screens, and he was just hitting mid-ranges. That's what he did. That's how I could compare as far as, mid-range. It's interesting because, Rip studied Reggie Miller. So, like with my team now, I have everybody study someone. And I tell them, like, who's your draft comparison? And I have them study tapes of people, and that's the way I do. A point guard, Reek, he had told him he studies Chris Paul. And I wanted him to play like Chris Paul. With my son, he loves Giannis. Everybody loves Giannis. He's tall, thin, wants to Euro step all over the place. I was like, that's great, but I want him to study Anthony Davis, going that inside outside. I can't give up with big men just all the way being outside. I can't do it. He loves KD. Everybody around here loves KD. I love KD. But I'm like, bruh, I want you to block shots, get rebounds, back to the basket a little bit too, and go outside. You know what I mean? I want you to do everything. So that's why I want him to study Anthony Davis. That's the dude right there.
Anthony Davis, this generation's Tim Duncan.
It's tough because Tim Duncan is, I would say, more KG comparison, to be honest with you, because Tim Duncan was phenomenal. Don't get me wrong, it's no slight to Tim Duncan at all. But, he wasn't bringing the ball up the court, going, from the three-point line, all the different, versatility that's more KG. So I would say he's this generation's KG.
Where do they differ?
As far as KG and Anthony Davis, KG was a little bit more aggressive, of course. He would be psyching himself out. KG was like, as far as the attitude, he was like Russell Westbrook. You know what I mean? Just cursing in the air, yelling, carrying on. You know what I mean? And just psyching himself. That energy, that emotion, that would be that, the comparison I would make for that. But as far as the game, as far as the skill set, there's a lot of comparisons with similarities with Anthony Davis.
When you talk about Kevin Garnett, specifically just about junk talking and psyching himself out, was he really that crazy? And I don't mean crazy like mentally crazy, but just the level of his intensity. Was he? I've had conversations with Kevin. Kevin is cool, but like, that level of just psyching people out, cursing, yelling, when you're playing him on defense, is he just as vocal?
Yeah, I mean, it's a different mentality that he goes to, a whole different mindset. I mean, that's how I play. It's interesting because I had that aggressiveness that when I was playing, and it's funny because when you see people off the court, they have in their mind what they see on the court is going to be your personality, and it's not the same thing. You know what I mean? You can't be that aggressive in real life. This is different, and that's how KG is. You talk to him off the court, he's completely different. On the court, he's KG.
Yeah, no. Anthony Davis to me is I think the fact that he played point guard.
Yeah.
When he was younger, and then came into the league as a big man. I was talking to someone recently who said that the goal of his former coach in New Orleans, Monty Williams, was that he wanted him to be more of a center, and he wanted him to be Bill Russell-like. But Anthony likes dribbling.
Mm-hmm.
When I look at Kevin Garnett early in his career, I remember there was a series where Chauncey Billups was hurt. He had to play some point guard in Minnesota.
Yep.
But I feel like as KG got older, he settled in the post more.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my question is, for you as a big man, do you think that the big man position is making a return? Or do you think that it's just going to be hybrid big men?
I think it's going to be a little bit of both. I mean, you see the success that Dwight Howard has had in this postseason, especially how he played against Jokic. And he changed that series. I'll be honest with you. He came in from the first game, and his aggressive nature with them, he had Jokic all frustrated, got into foul trouble quickly. And, Jokic's game was all finesse, and he's, doing all this stuff, but he came embodying him. And then so he was trying to react to him, then he's out of his game. So you can see that from the beginning. And that was Dwight Howard that did that. You know what I mean? Now, yeah, everybody else is playing well and doing what they always do, but he was the key factor in that series. So what happens is when you have success, then you have other teams that copycat. And so he's going to be able to bring big men back in style with the success that he's having with them, with the Lakers. So even going back to Golden State, everybody started playing small ball after Golden State. After Golden State was shooting threes everywhere, then everybody copied. It's a copycat league. I remember when I was with the Wizards, and I just interviewed Coach Jordan. So that'll be coming out soon. But I talked about his Princeton offense. And when he was doing the dribble handoff from the top of the key with the big man, and when they were doing that a lot in New Jersey as well, and the success that they had with that group of Kenyon Martin and all of them. And then you saw other people doing the dribble handoff. That wasn't like that before. So it's a copycat league. So I say that to say, all us old dinosaur big men are all rooting for Dwight Howard to bring big men back.
And you got to show love to Pete Carroll, the Minnow Kings as well, who, the Nets definitely took some of that flair. Eddie Jordan as well as Michael Korn. And
definitely that whole crew. That was my crew with the Wizards. That was my guys.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. When I look at you talking about Dwight Howard, I have a two-part question. One, do you think that when Dwight was drafted in 2004 and when he played in the NBA, he was ahead of his time as far as big men and where they are now? And two, do you think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer?
I do think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I don't even think that's a question. But as far as being ahead of his time, I don't know. I mean, he was a specimen. He was at his height and his athleticism. It was something we haven't seen for a while. And, it was, and then his, he was a problem for a while. For those years, those young Dwight, now people are, it's people have short-term memories. So they remember his first stint in LA when it didn't work out with him and Kobe. Remember the stint in Houston that didn't work out, the year here with so people forget about the young Dwight in Orlando. And I'm like, oh yeah, people got short memories, but no, he was a problem.
You are probably one of the most vocal athletes that there are. Even when I bumped into you at Kenny's party back in February, it was like everybody was flocking to you. I remember you going out, you coming in, and I just know that a lot of people respect your point of view. We're currently in an election year, and we are, November 3rd is election day, and you comment at Trump a lot on Twitter.
I do.
My first question is this. Do you doubt the validity of him having COVID and the timing of it?
It's interesting. I interviewed Mark Cuban and for the rematch, and it's going to come out probably here in the next day or two on the basketballnews.com. Just wanted to do a quick plug of that. And we talked about this topic a lot. We talked about the topic of Trump, the topic of COVID. And, Mark Cuban's been outspoken. He's been, I interviewed him for my book, We Matter. And all we talked about was him speaking out about Trump, the whole interview, and that was a few years ago. So a lot's happened since then. So, we talked about everything about COVID. And, Mark Cuban made the point that if it weren't for Trump's calling it a hoax since February, of saying that it's fake news, of saying that, encouraging his base. Now, this is his people, right? His supporters, to not take it seriously and to open up. All the red states. Now, all the red states are, I remember I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So, that's where my mom is. My friends are. Everybody I grew up with, my classmates, they're in Oklahoma, right? Red states, Texas, Oklahoma, Florida, all of those. They're all opening up early in the summer. Remember you said he wanted everybody to open up by Easter. He said the coronavirus is all going to be gone. Everybody open up by Easter. It's just a Democratic ploy to get me out of office. Like the whole coronavirus was created because the Democrats don't want him in office. Like that's how narcissistic he is. But that's what he did, and he encouraged that. And then you saw how many numbers have gone up, and you saw how many deaths. We're at now over 200,000. 200,000. And then, it's even going back last week when you're looking at debates and the timing of everything. And now, so Cuban was like, if it weren't for that, how many lives would we have saved? You know what I mean? Like this is not just a little oops. This is a big one. So it really even should. I don't understand how it's like. I don't understand what his supporters are seeing in him to say they still support him after everything. And I asked Cuban. I was like, well, financially, he's Mark Cuban. He's a billionaire. So from the tax breaks standpoint, it would probably be more beneficial for somebody in Mark Cuban's position to support Trump financially. And you could even, you know what I'm saying? Like, all right, I get that from while most billionaires are Republicans from a tax break standpoint, it benefits them. And he said he couldn't do it, even with that. And he started going down the list of reasons, because at first he was a Trump supporter and before the first election. And then he talked about, because he's not a Democrat, he's not a Republican, he says he's an independent. And so he said, at first I was like, okay, he doesn't have any political ties to anyone. It's, he says his mind is gonna, that whole thing. And then he said, but then he started talking to him and he said he was like, this dude has no idea what he's talking about on any of these subjects. Wow. And he was like, I was going down the list. He's like a little elementary level subjects on different things. He said he had no idea about any of it, like nothing. He's like, so I was like, I can't support this cat. And that's why he stopped supporting him. So we talk about it all in the interview. But so really what I see now with athletes and becoming such a threat to Trump
Right.
You know, and it's because of the power of athletes. One of the things that I remember that Kareem told me when I interviewed him, he said the reason why people get upset with athletes, the opposition gets upset with athletes when they speak out on something that they don't agree with, is because of the power of influence that they have. That's the reason. That's the reason why it's so crucial to them. Why it's so important to them. Why they zero in on athletes. And I'm ever since he told me that, I'm paying attention. I'm like, oh, that's why. That's why. It's not just that he doesn't want the athlete to speak out, or it's because they're threats to him. So much so that you remember when he orchestrated that whole thing with Kobe Covington when he won the UFC, and he said, you know, he's talking, and he's saying, you know, not like those woke athletes like LeBron that are anti-American, everything like that. Then they orchestrated the fake call in the middle of the press conference. You know what I'm talking about? It was like poorly executed. It was like a film out of a bad movie. But the reason why Trump took the time and energy to do that is because of the level of a threat that LeBron is to him. And it makes perfect sense. You know what I mean? Like perfect sense. So, you know, that's why I keep encouraging athletes to keep using their voices. He wouldn't take the time to try to, you know, denigrate him if he wasn't a threat to him. That just proves that what he's doing is effective.
So, do you think that for LeBron, the goal or the plan is to just continue to promote voting, or do you see LeBron running for office one day?
I think LeBron can do anything that LeBron wants to do. To be honest with you, I mean, he talked about before that he wants to own a team. And he said that very clearly and said that repeated, you know, different times. And I think LeBron's the power that he has. It's so with his more than a vote. Let's just talk about that one. The more than a vote, right? So he is attacking something that we know is going to be a crucial issue during this very important election, maybe the most important one of my life. As far as voter suppression. And he specifically, you know, gathered different volunteers to be able to make sure. We sat there with the debates and heard Trump say and encourage his base of militias or whatever they are to go towards the voting booth, to the voting polls, to intimidate voters. So he gave the mandate during the debates. So the fact that LeBron has done to this level to make sure that everything is happening the way it's supposed to happen, you know what I mean, democratically, and you know the NBA, not just LeBron, but where they're going to have polling sites for arenas now, and they're going to have all these different initiatives. That is a huge threat to Trump. All the stuff that he's doing in Florida to try to get people who were on the no voting list, not able to vote, to now be eligible to vote.
Right.
You know what I mean? Oh, that is, Florida is a very important state in this election. So all of these things, so it's more so than just not wanting athletes to speak. LeBron is a threat to Trump and his administration. And that's powerful. So I mean, what he's doing, you can't help but applaud it.
As the old folks would say, learn me something, meaning teach me something. You played for the Wizards during Michael Jordan's comeback season, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And I vividly remember 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
I vividly remember Michael playing at the Garden as a Wizard.
Mm-hmm.
I remember watching it on TV. I just remember a lot. What was the Garden like?
What was the Garden like?
At that game when Michael returned?
Well, I mean, you got to understand, when Michael, I mean, every game was just, you know, it was like sold out. You know, you come there outside, it was hundreds of thousands of people. You know, it was just complete. But that was every game, no matter where we were. We're in Utah. We're in, you know what I mean, wherever. Like that was the atmosphere with MJ. And then when they knew that it was his last season, oh man, everywhere. It was like traveling with Michael Jackson. You know what I mean? Or like the Beatles or something like that. You know those images that you see of like overseas when Michael Jackson would come to one of them places and there'd be thousands of people and you would see people like just look at him and start crying or like touch his arm and then pass out or something like that. That's what I saw with MJ. It was the craziest thing on earth. So that's how every single game was, honestly.
What during Michael's Wizards era of basketball
Mm-hmm.
you think is so underrated and understated that it's sickening?
Oh, there's so much. I mean, I don't even know where to begin. I mean, the thing about it is when they did the Last Dance, they should do a Last Dance just for the Wizards years. Now, we didn't have any camera crews, at least there's cameras all the time, but I don't know if anybody was getting footage. But there was so much stuff that happened and that they could make into a documentary. And I mean, there's so much. I mean, I remember. So you referenced 9/11. I remember sitting after 9/11. Right, I'm in the locker room. I'm literally right across from MJ. My locker was right, across the way, and across the way was MJ's locker. So he's sitting there, we're watching the TV, and it's showing these families from 9/11. And they're showing this, real emotional time. It was like, little kids crying, it was terrible, right? And so he's sitting there looking, and he do this thing where he bite his lip. And he's just sitting there looking, kind of rocking. And then he called his guy in, right? Called his guy to come to him. So the guy came over there and he said, I want to donate my entire salary to those people. And then, he said, okay, you want to go through a charity or organization? He was like, no charity, no organization. I want you to get in touch with those people in particular, and I want them to get each an equal ration of the salary and everything on top of that for all of them to be covered. And then he said, okay, like it will be done. And then he left, right? And then, so I'm sitting there looking at him like, wow. And he's sitting there like, and he's looking at the screen, and literally his eyes are like watering. And it's stuff like that nobody really knows about, that if they saw, they would have a different opinion of Michael Jordan. Because I always get now I can say I have like 10, 15 different stories of things that I saw of him do like that I literally saw, that I was there and saw with my own eyes, things in the community, things in this stuff like, and I remember one time asking him, I was like, why don't you tell anybody that you're doing all this stuff? Like, why do you keep it quiet? Like everybody, and he's like, I don't do it for that reason. And that's what he said. He shook his head. And I'm thinking like, yeah, but they cats think bad about you, man. Like if you tell everybody this, then they have a different, but if people could see it, like I saw it. So whenever I go to different things, everybody knows that I've been an activist and outspoken for a while. So a lot of programs bring me on, and it's been happening since I was my playing days, and they want me to talk bad about MJ because he's like the antithesis of the athlete activist. You know what I mean? So, and I'm like, y'all don't know. You know what I mean? Now was he outspoken politically and talking about different things? No, he was not. But you can't cast him as somebody who cared nothing about the community, because that's not what I saw. Now, I also say that you have to allow people room to grow. And what he's done now is turn over a new leaf. So I remember before the first election, before in 2008, or before President Obama became President Obama, he organized a whole campaign for then Barack Obama, and all the players, everybody fundraising, he was campaigning for him, everything like that. That's not something that the old Jordan would do, but that's something that he grew into. Even now, seeing his statements about Black Lives Matter, about police brutality, of different instances and cases that happen, different things that he's doing. I mean, there's growth. So it may, is he always gonna, that Republicans buy shoes too, and his time in Chicago always gonna haunt him? Yeah, it is. But people have to be able to at least acknowledge that people can grow. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, and I think that that's significant. And even from a basketball perspective, the mentorship perspective, I feel as though Michael rubbed off a great deal on Rip Hamilton.
Oh, of course, he did. Rip Hamilton looked up to him.
Yeah.
And it was honestly, it's funny when you say that, though. We were such a surprise when they traded him because they worked so well together. And he deferred to him, but MJ wanted to have, a little bit more veteran, older, type of a players around him, and that's what he felt comfortable. That's when we brought in Oakley, we brought in, Byron Russell and all. So, and that's just what he wanted. And it is what it is. But MJ, like, I wish other people could have seen what I saw there. And that's just one story. That's just like one. I mean, we ain't got to talk about MJ the whole time. But I mean, there's so many I can tell. But it's just, people have this thought of MJ and they're so confidently incorrect. You know what I mean?
There's another person who people are so confident incorrect about, and it's one in the Brooklyn Nets is Kyrie Irving. My question to you is, as a civil rights activist self, would you consider him, Kyrie, the NBA's Colin Kaepernick?
I don't like to make comparisons, you know what I mean? But I'm somebody who, so I wrote an article after the players went on strike for the 2 games when Milwaukee Bucks didn't come out. And I wrote an article for Basketball News, and they didn't want me to have the title, but the title that I wanted was Stephen A. Smith owes Kyrie Irving an apology. That's what I wanted it to be. Right. And because, but it's not just Stephen A. Smith. It was a lot of different people who were just lambasting him after he gave the notion that, okay, maybe this isn't the right time for us to go to the bubble. Maybe we need to start, pressing on these things more important that's going on in society right now. And that was right after George Floyd, right after all these things that have happened. The news about Breonna Taylor came out. So the country was in a certain, period of racial, I don't even know what the right word is of where it was. You know what I mean? Like explosions, and there was, protests, and there was riots, and the more police brutality. And it seemed like after George Floyd happened, you had a enormous amount, and I will say the most white people that I've ever seen protesting a black man being murdered by the police. I will say that. But at the same time, you had the police then almost acting more aggressively, more, more brutality started happening after that. So all that was going on, and Kyrie said, you know what? Maybe this ain't the right time for us to go into like a bubble situation. And then you had the coronavirus, right? So he suggested that, and all like Stephen A. Smith was like, he sounds like a fool. Charles Barkley, he sounds dumb. You know what I mean? All these different, I was like, really? And then after the players, fast forward, after they went on strike, then you see Stephen A. Smith applauding the players for going on strike. I'm like, wait a minute, Stephen A. You got to go back to your comments that you made about Kyrie Irving, about Dwight Howard and Avery Bradley, when you called them all fools. And you know how he's all dramatic in his, you know what I mean? On first take, looking at the camera, you look like a fool. I'm like, bruh, like, why did you have to do all of that? You know what I'm saying? And the thing about it is, if you want to even go back to the 68 Olympics, okay? So John Carlos and Tommy Smith went to the Olympics. They did the Black Power salute, something that I have it in my office right now. It's crystallized in time for decades and forever, right? But then you had Kareem, who decided not to go. And I interviewed him and asked him about why he decided not to go. And his reasons were, I didn't have any reason to go. At the time, I didn't think that I was being respected as a black man in this country. And I didn't. So I went back and I used that example in the article. I said, so Stephen A. Smith, would you have called Kareem foolish? Would you say he looks like a damn fool, like you said about Kyrie, all in the camera and stuff like that? I was like, no, you need to be able to address it. Everybody can make a mistake. Everybody can say, okay, I missed, I shouldn't have said that. But at least be man enough to acknowledge that and say that. Don't just skip over and start congratulating the players now because they're taking strike and act like we don't remember all this stuff that happened before. I mean, I called him out on it. I didn't see no apology, but Dwight Howard said he appreciated me for saying it. Everybody, they all hit me. So, but I had an issue with that. And there's things, Kyrie, there's things that you could be also critical of Kyrie Irving about. Now, there's definitely room for criticism, but on that topic, I just didn't like the way so many people in the media just completely tried to rip him to shreds, for suggesting that there's more going on right now in basketball.
How much of the criticism for Kyrie comes from his time with the Boston Celtics?
I don't know. I mean, you can say that about how many of it comes from, his time with Cleveland and the issues with LeBron. I mean, there's different reasons, but one thing don't have nothing to do with the other. You know what I mean? Like people say, oh, this is the same guy that said the earth was flat. What did that got to do with what we're talking about right now? You know what I'm saying? I'm like, can y'all stay on topic? This is what he's talking about right now.
What does it have to do with the cost of tea in China?
Yes, exactly.
Tell me about basketball news.
So basketball news is a platform, and that I'm going to be writing for them. 4 or 5 articles a month. I had the rematch already under Fly TV. So I originally started the rematch with the Players Tribune. Did a year with them, and they liked it, but it was a little bit too deep for them. To be honest with you, a little bit too heavy. And I was interviewing Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. I interviewed Charles Oakley after the whole thing with the brawl. It was just, I'm going for it, And so the whole point of the rematch is to have a sit down with athletes to allow them to be able to tell their story. Because a lot of times the media gets it wrong. And people think one thing, and I'm giving the athlete the chance to be able to recreate, either retell or anything like that. Thus the name, the rematch. Mm-hmm. So, they didn't renew it, Players Tribune, after the first year. And, so I went and started with this group called Fly TV. And they were like, okay, yeah, you do your thing. Let's just start knocking them out. So I interviewed Gilbert Arenas. I interviewed, I just went down the list, and it was great. But Players Tribune didn't want me to go that they wouldn't have wanted me to interview Gilbert Arenas. There's a few people who they said, well, no, we don't want to interview him. And I was like, well, if the whole point of it is to allow athletes a platform, how am I going to tell this athlete that he can't have a platform to be able to tell his story? I just didn't. So it was all good though. Y'all do what y'all do. I'm gonna do what I do. So then Basketball News reached out to me, and Alex Kennedy, he's the editor that I worked with when he was at Hoops Hype. Mm-hmm. So I used to write for Hoops Hype when I was still playing, and I would write articles all the time with them. And he was my editor, so we worked well. He knew how I pushed the envelope a little bit, and I pushed the envelope in a way that, now people are a little bit more comfortable doing, but then they didn't want that. You know what I'm saying? They were like, okay, you can say this, but let's take out this whole section of what you said here. I'm like, well, dang, that's the whole point of the article. You know what I'm saying? So, but with him, he kind of let me do my thing. And, so when he called me about Basketball News, and he said, okay, we're starting this new site, and, we're going to do this and this and that. I was like, oh, okay, so who's the main editors? Because that's my first question. Because I've done writing, I've worked with CNN, I've worked with MSNBC, Huffington Post, I go down the list, ESPN, and, like I told you, I want to push the envelope with different things, and sometimes people don't want you to do that. And that's basically what it is. They want you to, okay, you can say it, but say it kind of like this. I'm like, well, no, that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say it the way I said it. Right. So he said, no, you do your thing. It's going to be just like when we were at Hoops Hype, the same kind of format, and you do your thing, and I'll do some grammatical errors and stuff like that, but otherwise it's your voice and your expression is your expression. And I was like, cool. So they signed James Posey down there. Kenyon Martin's going to bring his stuff there. Vinny Del Negro is there. They have some great podcasts that they brought, clips, and it's great for me because the creative freedom is more important to me than saying that I'm writing for CNN or I'm writing for ESPN. To be honest with you, you know what I mean? That's what's more important to me is the creative freedom. So far, it's a perfect match.
Who is your dream interview for this platform?
I've always wanted to interview Kaepernick for a while. Well, the thing about it is with my book, with We Matter, I interviewed all my heroes. You know what I mean? I interviewed Bill Russell and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf and Craig Hodges and John Carlos. And I interviewed Muhammad Ali's daughter and Malcolm X's daughter. You know what I'm saying? I was like, so I've interviewed so many of my heroes. But I wanted to sit down with Colin Kaepernick, but I like the way he's controlling his thing and he's doing it his way. And he's going to have his book and he's going to have keeping everything tight. I got no problem with that. There's much respect to him. I interviewed Eric Reed for my book and talked to him a whole lot. So it was, it was good. But if I would say who I would be my dream now to interview, would be Kaepernick.
I like it. What would you ask him?
I'd ask him so much. I mean, there was so much I would want to ask him. I mean, between the backlash, between the reaching the point of, was he surprised of Trump? And it's interesting because Trump was so dedicated to misrepresenting his message. It's so funny because so I was on this platform, this panel. This was last summer before the pandemic, of course, and there was a platform of journalists in DC. Right. I remember Kevin Blackistone was there on the panel with me. It was a great, but it was a whole conference. So one of the topics, Mark Spears from the ESPN was there too. So the topic was the relationship struggles between athletes and the media. Right. That was the topic, and they were talking about that for a little while, and then they started talking about Kaepernick, and then they said, Kaepernick didn't even want to talk to the media. And it's like, and then he criticized us for the way we covered him. And I said, well, wait a minute. Hold up, time out. Kaepernick talked for 10, 15 minutes after he took a knee and explained everything. You're like, yeah, but we weren't clear on everything. I was like, no, that's not true. He specifically said what he was taking a knee for and what he was not taking a knee for. He said, this is not about the veterans. He said this is about police brutality, and he went through the whole thing. He said, I have family members that are veterans. He's like, it's not that I'm anti-American. It's not. He went through the whole thing specifically of what it's about. He said it was police brutality, systemic racism, and the political process, because he didn't like that we only had two options, Hillary and Trump, and he didn't like both of them. He said we should have more options. He laid it all out. So then when people afterwards are like, well, we don't know why he's taking a knee. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? All you gotta do is go to the tape. Like he said it. And so my issue with that was, don't buy into the narrative that Trump and the right have intentionally done to try to muddy the waters, to confuse everything about why they're doing that right now with Black Lives Matter. They're like, what is Black Lives Matter goal? What do you mean? What is the goal? Or they say, okay, so defund the police. They know the difference between the word defund and the word abolish. They're not synonyms. They know what one means and what the other means. They understand when the people have consistently laid out the difference of, restructuring what the police is responsible for things that they're actually trained for, and giving those funds to a different, like mental health. When somebody thinks they have mental health, you call the mental health people, not the police. They understand all that, but they're purposely trying to muddy the waters. So that's what I see is happening, a lot of the times. But that's why it's important to have people in the media. It's not just black, because some people say, well, that's why we need more black media, people. I was like, no, it's not just black people, because you got a lot of people like Jason Whitlock out there. You got a lot of people like, that are doing what they're doing, but they black in the mug. So it's not just black. You know what I mean? So it's media. Malcolm X said a long time ago that the media is the most powerful entity in the world, because they have the power to change, people's minds and perspectives, something like that, paraphrasing. But that's the absolute truth. And that's why, somebody who is so critical of the media, and I've always been critical of the media, that's the whole reason why I want to create the rematch, so people can kind of undo what the media has done to them personally. So that's what I'm doing.
That's real. I know you got to go in a couple of minutes, but I guess my last question, I don't end with sports, race. I feel like the way Luka Doncic is protected by certain people in the media, it's like he is, I guess I'm going to say it like this, I believe that he is white.
The great white hope.
He's white media's LeBron James.
The thing about it is Luka is a very likable person. He is. So whether you think he's getting hyped a little bit too much, he's very likable and he's very talented. So it's kind of like, it's you can't handle him as far as the skill wise, because he's nice. That's what he is. Is he getting hyped a little bit more because he's white? Yeah, come on now. It's like saying, okay, yeah, Eminem is nice, but is he getting a little bit hyped a little bit more all his whole career because he was white? He said that. You know what I mean? So it's that part you can't really deny, but it's interesting because, he is a special talent. Like literally, like you see how he plays and what he's able to do and how young he is.
James.
He ain't gotta be LeBron James, but he's special. You know what I mean? He ain't gotta be LeBron James special, but he's still special.
He's talented,
right? So I mean, but so is he gonna be overhyped? Is he gonna be overprotected at times? If he's gonna, yeah, okay, we know that, but he's nice. Don't get it twisted.
When you look at the Mavericks, I think he played one game for the Mavericks.
Yeah, I don't even play that. I was hurt the whole time. Oh no, I played in one preseason game. That's right. That's when I started getting hurt. All right, you did your homework. Look at you.
I talked to Anton Walker about this recently.
Okay.
He said to me that he feels like Dallas is missing kind of like a goon or a bully, like an Oakley type of player or Rodman type of player.
Well, that's why they're looking at Montrezl Harrell. You know what I mean? That's the reason why. They know that. They know what they're missing. Mark Cuban ain't stupid. You know what I mean? So it's funny. I asked Cuban about how good Luka and my man can be. And I related to, I was like, can they be like Dirk? Can they go to Dirk level? And he was like, oh, definitely. He was like, yes, Luka is special. And it's interesting. This is another thing because when I went there, Dirk and Steve Nash were there. And I asked him, do you regret giving up on Steve Nash? And he said, yes, that's my biggest regret. Mm-hmm. It's like because, Steve Nash had some back problems and things like that. So they didn't think that he was going to be able to last in the league. And him and Dirk were like this, like they were tight. Yep. So he was like, yeah, that was his biggest mistake. If he could take that back, he would 1,000 times. And I didn't know that him and Steve Nash had a little bit of bad blood for a while over that. He told me that when I interviewed him. I was like, oh, really? I didn't know that. But he said, yeah, he's like, they're cool now. But, but going back, Dallas, they know what they need. Even back then when it was Dirk and Steve, they needed, different role players that didn't get, and even Mike Finley. Mike Finley was the glue to that team. You know what I mean? Like people forget. It's so interesting how people have such short-term memories. You know what I mean? Like it's amazing to me. Like I was talking to people about Dwight, and like we talked earlier, they just forgot about everything that happened in Orlando. You know what I mean? I was like, well, it wasn't that long ago, but that's what it is. But yeah, I would expect Dallas to go after somebody like Montrezl Harrell, somebody that is that aggressive. You know what I mean? Not I don't want to say goon, but Markieff Morris. Like I can see them going after both of them pretty hard.
Enforcer.
Yeah, definitely enforcer.
Yes, yeah. Well, here's the good news. You're off the hot seat.
I'm off the hot seat. You be firing them away.
I appreciate you, man.
We ain't even talking about the Knicks. You tell me what's up with the Knicks. So I just last question that I want you to tell me what's going on with the Knicks and what they're about to do. Please give me something positive so I can,
There's interest in Chris Paul, but it all matters upon whether or not how they go about it. Specifically, if they use Kevin Knox and Ntilikina and some of those other guys that are on their roster. But to be truly honest with you, I think for Chris Paul, I mean, he did say last night he likes to hoop. I think for the Knicks in that situation, I don't think the Knicks are the best fit. The Milwaukee Bucks are the best fit for Chris Paul.
I agree. I think Milwaukee would be perfect for him, to be honest.
Or Denver.
I like Denver for them, but Denver would be good for him. I like Denver would be good for him, but I think Milwaukee would be great too, though.
But I think specifically to your question about the Knicks, I think that one of the mistakes that they made in 2011 is, as much as I like Carmelo Anthony, I know that is your Syracuse guy. Mm-hmm. They gave up looking retroactively on it, they gave up a lot of young talent to get him back then.
Okay.
And I think as much as it was good to see Melo come to New York, he was born in Red Hook. I think at the end of the day, if they had waited that summer, they probably could have gotten him. I think that they let the Nets peer pressure get to him, even though he was never coming to play in Newark. Yep. I think at the end of the day, though, the Knicks need to learn from, I don't know if it's a mistake, that experience. Sometimes you got to grow young talent. Mitchell Robinson is on that team. RJ Barrett is on that team. Ntilikina is on that team. Kevin Knox. I think that sometimes you got to grow talent. You look at the Oklahoma City Thunder with Russ and Kevin and all those guys. They grew over time.
But Oklahoma City has way more patience than New York.
This is true.
New York wanted to be ready yesterday, and that's. But I feel them though because it's been so long, And so it's like, where we missed out on the Zion sweepstakes, missed out on the, you know what I mean? And for a while, you was thinking that LaMelo was going to come there. It doesn't look like that's going to happen now. I mean, I understand why Knicks fans are anxious and want something to happen. Oh, and talk about the KD and Kyrie, because remember, they were supposed to go to New York, according to media, but they was never really going to New York.
Kyrie, you know what I'm saying? Well, they came to New York, they just went to a different borough.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean. Oh, but so I saw you talking about it before, and I wanted to get yours. This will be the last one. Your interpretation of Kyrie Irving's statements about the coaching.
I didn't agree with him. And I think certain people think I agree with everything he said.
Yeah, Kyrie's your man, though. I understand it. You know what I mean?
That's my people's. But what I say to you, the coaching thing was a little interesting to me. Okay. I think that at the end of the day, Steve Nash is the head coach of the Brooklyn Nets, and but I also think that in a collective, in the sense of collective development, maybe that's what he meant. But at the same time, I also think that at the end of the day, Steve Nash is not coming out of retirement to play point guard, so let him coach and let you play point guard. I do also think that Kyrie knows what buttons to push to get people's attention. You think about it, it's the NBA Finals. You're using that time to do press, just like Victor Oladipo was on Fat Joe's show, right. Discussing a myriad of topics, including he wants to be a Pacer. Kyrie knew that coming on KD's show, he could push some buttons, but I also do think that as it relates to the comment about or the slight of LeBron, I don't think that was intentional. I think that was him being a creative and him unintentionally slighting LeBron just in conversation and discussing him being excited about playing with KD. I don't think that was a slight, but the Steve Nash stuff, I wasn't really feeling it.
I think he got to be more careful with his words.
I agree.
You know what I mean? And so if it's not, you have to know that people are going to try to twist your words when there isn't an easy way for them to twist. Don't make it easy for them. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So the way that I thought both of the comments, you made it too easy. You just gave them a lob. You know what I mean? Like not even a tough lob, like an easy lob like that. And that's all. So I would just say you just got to be more careful.
In the age of aggregation, leaving out is still saying.
Yeah, that's true. Definitely.
So but I also think, did you see Kyle Kuzma's press conference last night when they asked him about trolling and people on the internet saying different things in his response?
Something like he didn't care, or what did he say? Something like that.
IDGAF, he don't care.
Yeah, I saw that.
I don't think Kyrie gives a damn. I think there's a part of him that does, there's a part of him that doesn't, and I think the part of him that does not is rooted in his level of confidence as a human being, and people perceive that as being overconfident.
Yeah, okay, I guess I could go with that. But but he also has to know. I mean, there's ways that you can make a splash without making yourself look bad.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like there's plenty of other things he could have said. So he just got to be more. He just got to be more careful with his words. Yeah. That's all. I got nothing but respect for him, but he got to be more careful.
I do too. I think that this year, I think that level of not caring is going to he's going to be protected by Kevin in the same breath that Kyrie protected Kevin this year. He's going to be protected next year because they're coming for him. And I think you need strong veteran leaderships. I'm hoping they re-sign Jamal Crawford.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that. At the end of the day, Steve Nash is the perfect coach, and I'm told Phil Handy is, as well as Rod Strickland, are both interests of the Nets in their assistant coaching staff. So it's going to be interesting. I think he'll be protected, but I think winning cures all. You look at Tom Brady, when all that Deflategate stuff happened, certain people get amnesia because he won.
Yeah, you're right. That's the way it is. I mean, look at Jimmy Butler. I mean, they were saying he was a cancer. You know what I mean? Literally, like all the places, like he was a cancer. He go to Miami, does the same thing that he did there, the same intensity, the same way he pushed people, everything like that, but he's winning. And now it's like all praises to Jimmy Butler. That's the way it is.
look at what ended up happening with Brett Brown in Philadelphia.
Yeah, you're right. That's the way it works.
Hmm?
That's the way it works.
Yes, sir. Brother,
Yes,
I
sir.
appreciate you.
I appreciate you, man. Keep doing your thing.
You keep doing your thing, and we're going to talk soon.
All right, for sure. That's
I'm
what's
in.
up. All right.
Talk.
Let's.